Number 55 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies list is one of the legendary director Alfred Hitchcock's absolute best. 1959's North by Northwest opens up in New York City. I love getting glimpses of the older world like this, and speaking of a glimpse, this is where we get to see Alfred Hitchcock's signature cameo, really early on in the movie as he misses a bus. We meet advertising executive Roger Thornhill, played by silver screen legend Cary Grant. This movie is considered one of Cary Grant's most iconic performances as it was so well-rounded. This was his third time working with Hitchcock. Thornhill is mistaken for a man in a much different line of work, George Kaplan, a spy. Two thugs working for Philip Van Damme, played by James Mason, grab Thornhill and stuff him into a car. Mason's performance of a bad guy who was still suave made him a very memorable movie villain, and this is a formula that would be replicated for many Bond villains down the line. His arc in the movie was also based on real-life fears people were having of Cold War espionage, which really struck a chord with audiences in its day. Thornhill is brought in front of Van Damme and his right-hand man, Leonard, played by Martin Landau. Interestingly enough, Landau's performance intentionally had homoerotic subtext in it, suggesting that he and Van Damme may have been romantic together. This is a very daring move for a mainstream movie in 1955. These two gangsters think that Thornhill is Kaplan and interrogate him under this assumption. Anytime Thornhill protests, they think that it's just Kaplan using his spy training. Hitchcock gets going with the villain's convoluted murder plot trope early in movie making. Van Damme and his thugs force Thornhill to drink a ton of bourbon, planning on staging his death as a drunk driving accident. Thornhill manages to slip the goons, steal a car, and get himself out of there. Thornhill then figures that the best way to prove that he's not Kaplan is to find the real Kaplan. He returns to the site of his abduction. He gathers intel and spends some time hunting the real spy, while he himself has to constantly look over his shoulder. He ends up at the United Nations and actually gets to talk to someone connected to Kaplan, a man called Lester Townsend, played by Philip Ober. But before Townsend can give Thornhill any real information, Townsend, is killed. Thornhill just got thrust into this whole mess a whole lot deeper. He's caught at the crime scene, holding the murder weapon. He reacted quickly and didn't live in a time with 1,000 true crime shows and podcast streaming constantly, so cut him a break on grabbing the murder weapon. He doesn't know what else to do, so he runs. As he's still trying to find the real Kaplan to get the goons off of his back and now hopefully clear his name for the murder, he hops on a train to Chicago, where he meets Eve Kendall, played by Eva Marie Saint. Saint was well known by movie fans of the day for a stellar performance she gave a few years earlier in On the Waterfront. This woman finds him charming and even helps him dodge the police. At least that's what Thornhill thinks. Kendall is working for Van Damme and only kept the police away so her boss could grab him. There seems to be a bit of truth to the charming angle that I mentioned as kind of a misdirect. Even though she's working for the enemy, there is definitely some level of attraction here. They have a lot of time to spend together where Thornhill works his charm. He and Kendall have some genuine romantic moments together. She ends up giving him a meeting location, telling him it'll be Kaplan on the other end. This meetup is obviously not what Thornhill thinks it's gonna be, leads to one of the most iconic scenes in movie history. This clip is used in any compilation, montage, whenever they're showing best of movies, whenever they're showing exciting scenes from the Silver Age. Thornhill arrives at the location, isolated crossroads with nothing of note as far as the eye can see. A crop dusting plane starts attacking him. He runs through the fields, dodging his attacker before he can trick it, causing it to crash into an oil truck. It's a cool scene. It does hold up, and it's made all the cooler knowing that it's from an era before the plane was animated in with a computer after the fact. Thornhill starts to take charge at this point. He's been set up and wants to start taking action rather than reacting to an impossible situation. He finds a business of Van Damme's in Chicago and goes there. I assume for Van Damme, but he ends up finding Kendall in the process, where he confronts her. Van Damme orders his men to kill Thornhill, still thinking him Kaplan. Thornhill reacts quickly and makes a scene in public so that the local police arrest him rather than having to face the henchmen bent on killing him. Thornhill is finally in a place to get some answers, as is the audience. It's revealed that there is no George Kaplan. He's a fictional spy that the government created to throw Van Damme off the scent of their real spy, the beautiful Eve Kendall. The government then enlists Thornhill's help in protecting Kendall, as Thornhill is already involved, and they probably are pretty desperate. The next stop is South Dakota. Van Damme is working on fleeing the country with stolen, classified government secrets. The climax of the movie is another iconic scene that shows up in countless montages, but also has been parodied even more times than that. The final showdown is on Mount Rushmore. Van Damme is on to Kendall, where Thornhill gets involved and tries to get her away from the bad guy. Thornhill and Kendall are literally climbing on the faces carved for the monument, evading Van Damme's men. Some henchmen fall to their death. Van Damme is ultimately arrested. As Kendall is about to plummet to her own death, Thornhill reaches out and the movie cuts. This isn't a Sopranos-type ending. We do catch up with our heroes, romantically united on a train. That final scene is so exciting and very well shot for its day and age. It's also very convincing that the actors are actually on location. I really believe that they were. In reality, the US government would not let Hitchcock film the movie there, so he had to recreate large portions of the monument on sound stages, to scale, to get the scene he wanted. That probably worked out for the best, even though it was expensive for the studio, because it was probably way safer for the actors. Cary Grant was 20 years older than Eva Marie Saint, but audiences, 70 years on, are still buying their chemistry. I personally find it tough to guess actors' age in movies as old as this one. People looked older then, just across the board, and the styles, the clothing, the hair, the glasses, that are now old to our modern sensibilities, play tricks with our brain. When North by Northwest hit theaters in 1959, audiences and critics loved it. It was immediately pushed to the top of Hitchcock's work as one of his best movies. They praised Grant's performance, the scope of the movie, its various locations, and the scale of the set pieces. I know when I did the recap it seemed like, and then he went here, and then he went here, and then he went here, and I felt like all of those things were important to mention because it is kind of that globe-trotting thing that, say, Indiana Jones would borrow from a few more decades on. They also love the blend of comedy and drama. The movie keeps the viewer hooked and allows them to laugh to relieve some tension from time to time. The movie was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Editing, Best Art Direction, and Best Original Screenplay. Given Hitchcock's reputation, along with an incredible cast and the positive reception, North by Northwest was, of course, a financial success. It had an estimated budget of about $4.3 million, and it grossed $13.3 million globally, making it the highest-grossing movie of 1959. That showed the world that Hitchcock had mainstream appeal. It also showed he knew how to keep an audience on the hook with suspense, and that cleared the path for his follow-up movie, probably his most famous movie, 1960's Psycho. North by Northwest is considered by many to be one of the best movies of all time. It's a prime example of the spy genre and would define things that would eventually become tropes. It didn't just help take Hitchcock's career to the next level, but it's a foundational stepping stone for many spy movies, including the still ongoing James Bond franchise. In 1995, the United States National Film Registry chose North by Northwest for preservation for its cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. Even Hitchcock said that this is one of the films that he enjoys rewatching the most. It's a very enjoyable movie, though it does feel a bit more dated than some of Hitchcock's other works. There's something about his horror movies, or Rope, which was an experimental one in doing a movie with no cuts except for when the film canister ran out. Those things help age the movie a little bit better for me, and the tension sticks a little better. Calling it dated is by no stretch a knock on the movie. It is fantastic, it holds up, and it's something that any movie lover should see, if nothing else for film education. Check out this playlist for the AFI Top 100 movies covered so far, and be sure to subscribe to follow me all the way through number 1.